Hey, everybody. Welcome to our Parabellum Defense Services podcast. We're doing it remotely today because we're trying to keep the baby out of the gun store.
Hope everybody had a happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, still stuffed with turkey and stuffing and mashed potatoes.
And we had like the chillest Thanksgiving ever this year.
Yeah.
Like it really, like we invited our neighbor over because she was just not going to be with family, and I just cooked a turkey breast. That was it. It was very unspecial.
4 out of the 6 kids are gone with grandparents.
Yep, that'll do it. So we have some latest news story from the Department of Justice. Or the Justice Department. And it says the Justice Department opens a new section to protect gun ownership rights. The Justice Department plans to open a new civil rights section next week dedicated to protecting Second Amendment gun ownership rights. Attorneys in this section are supposed to use their enforcement authority to contest local laws or policies they believe are overly restrictive on gun rights. The Justice Department is trying to comply with an executive order President Donald Trump issued just after being inaugurated in January that seeks to protect gun ownership. The order requires a review of gun restrictions to assess any ongoing infringements. Because it is foundational to maintaining all other rights held by Americans, the right to keep and bear arms must not be infringed, the order says. The new office will be called the Second Amendment Rights Section. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi is serving as chairwoman over the special unit. Now that's interesting to me. Because right off the bat, wasn't Pam Bondi the one who, like, if I remember, I think she's like from Florida, isn't she? Isn't she Floridian?
No idea.
But I remember her voting against 18 to 21-year-old adults having firearms. I distinctly remember that. I don't know if it was out of Florida, but I do remember she was anti-adults 18 to 21 having firearms. You had to be 21 or older. And so I think it's funny that she would be in charge of that, because that right there, I'm kind of going, well, she's kind of an infringer herself, isn't she? But anyway, for too long, the Second Amendment, which establishes the fundamental individual right of Americans to keep and bear arms, has been treated as a second-class right, Bondi wrote in a memo last April, announcing her intent to establish a unit. No more. It is the policy of this Department of Justice to use its full might to protect the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. Justice Department officials revealed details of their plan in a recent advisory to members of Congress. The reorganization that created the special office is a matter of discretion for Justice Department officials. Federal law requires only that they notify Congress. The advisory said no new funds are needed for the Second Amendment rights section. The unit is a task force that joins efforts of the FBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the U.S. Solicitor General, and the U.S. Department of Civil Rights Division. Other Justice Department actions this year give a glimpse of where the Second Amendment rights section efforts are headed. In a controversial move, the Justice Department published an interim rule in the Federal Register in March that creates a process for persons with criminal convictions to have their gun rights restored. It created alarm among gun control advocates that it could allow felons to be armed. Now, I do find that interesting right there, because I've heard people give different opinions on the idea of felons having firearms. And some being like, no, you're a felon, you shouldn't have one. But I've had other people make this statement, and I think it's pretty legit. And they say, if they served their time and paid their dues, why should they be punished further by not being allowed to have a firearm? And if there's someone who cannot be trusted with a firearm, why are they back out in society? It seems like if you were granted a punishment that fits your crime, you served it, you paid your dues, you should be allowed to have your firearms. And if you're someone who shouldn't be able to be or if you're someone who cannot be trusted with a firearm, you should not be out in society, because then you're not someone who could be trusted with a hammer or a machete or a kitchen knife. I mean, do you agree or disagree with that?
Oh no, that's such a touchy subject because I mean, everybody wants to talk about Constitution, Second Amendment, right to carry shall not be infringed, and it's like, well, I mean, if the right to carry cannot be infringed, that should be everybody. I mean, even the mentally ill. So it's like when we talk about opening it up, I mean, if we really want to interpret the Second Amendment here, it's like, well, then everybody, regardless of crime or mental illness or whatever, should be able to carry. But then the question is it allowed to carry or allowed to possess or keep one in your home? I mean, there's a difference between having one in your home for self defense versus having one on your possession when you're out in public. And it's like, okay, well, again, I always talk about drawing that line, and it's like, I really don't know what the right answer to that is. I mean, to discuss the felon thing, it's like, well, I mean, uttering a forged instrument is a felony. Writing a bad check, purposely writing a bad check, forgery, signing someone else's check. There's a lot of non-violent crimes that are felonies. And if you get convicted of a felony for a non-violent crime, you technically can't own a firearm anymore. And it's like, okay, is it all felons or is it just going to be violent crimes? Because then I'm like, well, if it's not a violent crime, but you got convicted of a felony, I want to say, okay, well, sure, have your firearms. But if you're convicted of a violent crime, then I'm like, well, no, maybe you shouldn't. Because you've already shown you're prone to violence. So we need to minimize your chances of having deadly weapons. But then to your point, it's like, well, did they serve their time? And, well, we take away their firearm, but they still have means other deadly weapons. And then that's an argument in itself. It's like, okay, well, we've already proven, or, society's already proven that we can kill each other without guns. Guns just make it easier. So do we limit that still and keep that from them? I tend to be on the verge to say, well, yeah, in my opinion, if you were convicted of a violent crime, maybe you shouldn't have your rights restored to carry a firearm. But other felony offenses that aren't violent crimes, yeah, sure, I don't see why not. But
What
again,
kind of violent crimes? Like, if you get in a fist fight at a bar, should you lose your right to bear arms if
if it becomes a
I mean,
felony, I mean, violent crime is violence against a person that results in significant injury or death. That's what ultimately accounts for felony offenses. I mean, a simple battery isn't a felony, but if you get on top of somebody and beat the crap out of them to the point where it's caused significant injury or death, now it's aggravated battery, which is a felony. So if you're prone to violence that bad that you beat someone to the point where it's aggravated, then yeah, maybe you shouldn't. I mean, but again, that's
well, I
such a
mean, but the
debatable
thing is, it's
topic.
like, okay, but if somebody is that violent, why are we putting them back out on the street?
Well,
Like, it seems to me if someone shouldn't or if there's somebody who cannot be trusted with a firearm because they are prone to violence, they shouldn't be out among the rest of civilized society at all.
yeah, I agree. But then what are we going to do with them? We can't if it's not at the level of life in prison. I mean, there's different levels of felonies depending on what state. First, second, third degree felonies. Some states call A, B, and C, and D, and E felonies, but the thing is, they all have different degrees of felony. Where it might be a felony, but you could serve 5, 10, 15, 25 life in prison, and it's like, okay, well, you got a violent felony offense that didn't hit the degree of life in prison. So, well, what are we gonna do with them? At some point, we got to release them. They got to go back out to society, and then you question rehabilitation and recidivism, and it's like, yeah, to your point, if we're trusting them enough that we feel like they can go back in society, then you know, should they? I should they have their gun rights restored? I don't know. That's such a debatable topic. And then again, we go back to, well, now we're drawing that line. If we can draw that line with felons, then we can draw that line with dementia patients. We can draw that line with mentally ill patients. Then we go back to like the red flag laws we were talking about. And it's like, as soon as we start drawing lines, it's like, before you know it, we have a list of people that can't own firearms. And yeah, I want to say that, in my opinion, I tend to want to say that, yeah, if you were convicted of violent crime, you should never be able to possess a firearm again. But then I'm also one for going, well, we're going to start drawing lines. So I really don't know what the answer to that question is. And, that's probably why we've had this topic for a long, long time about the Second Amendment. And the anti-gun activists want to take away our guns, but as soon as we take away one amendment, all the other amendments are up for grabs now. And now all of a sudden it's like we can take away the First Amendment, and now we don't need due process, and now we don't get a right by a jury of our peers. The judge could just sentence us for whatever. And it's like, so I don't know the answer. Part of me wants to say, well, the right shall not be infringed, therefore it shall not be infringed. Because then we start going down that path of who determines that. Who's going to sit here and say, this council or whatever now is going to be having the discretion of upholding federal constitutional laws and making sure the states are not infringing on the constitutional law. So it's going to be a panel of these people who were elected by whoever to make all the discretionary decisions. So we didn't vote for them. I mean, it's like, who chose these people and why are they now the deciders? It's like the Supreme Court justices. They're elected, or they're appointed by the president, and they're supposed to be the best of the best. So who are these Joe Schmoes? I don't know who these people are that are now going to be making the discretionary decisions on whether or not these laws are constitutional and who can and can't have the guns. And it's like, shouldn't that be up to the people? Should we start having like little nationwide votes on who should and shouldn't be able to carry? Because I mean, if it's the Constitution, then it should be up to the people. But even if we had the majority of people turn around and say we should no longer have guns, then it's like, no, we can't do that because the Constitution said it shall not be infringed. So you know, you start going. It's like we just start jumping down a rabbit hole, which is what I'm doing right now. It's like I don't know the answer to that question. What the best course of action is for that?
Okay. I guess I'll continue then. Let's see. Gun Violence Archive, a database of gun offenses, reports 378 mass shootings in the United States by November 25th. It defines a mass shooting as incidents with at least 4 deaths or injuries, excluding the shooter. The Justice Department also is investigating the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department for allegedly delaying approval for gun owners to carry concealed weapons. It followed a lawsuit by gun right groups that accused the Sheriff's Department of trying to block the approvals through excessive fees, a tedious application process, and a long wait time. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department denies wrongdoing, saying it said in a statement that staffing restrictions meant only 14 employees are available to review thousands of concealed permit applications. All this is taking place as a pivotal case on gun rights is scheduled for January 20th Supreme Court hearing. It is likely to determine the limits on Justice Department authority to enforce gun laws and policies. The cause of Wolford versus Lopez touches on whether Hawaii can impose criminal charges on legal gun owners who carry firearms in certain public places without prior permission, such as gas stations, restaurants, and grocery stores. The Justice Department filed a brief with the Supreme Court on Monday opposing the Hawaiian law. Hawaii's law plainly violates the Second Amendment, Bondi said in a post on X. And that's it.
Did that say the mass shooting definition is 4 or more?
Yes.
Well, that's changed because it used to be 3 or more. I wonder if that was a typo or if they changed their definition of what meant mass shooting.
Yeah, I actually had thought that. I had read that and I thought, I didn't think it was 4 or more. I thought it was a different number. Also, let's see if I can find it again. The Gun Violence Archive, a database of gun offenses, reports 378 mass shootings in the United States by November 25th. I think it's funny that they don't say since when, though.
I was going to say, is that
In the past year, past 10 years, past 20 years, past century, like since the dawn of mankind? Like, what are we talking here?
My active shooter course, and we talk about early recognition and intervention. FBI compiles active shooter nationwide. Now, the last information I have was the 20-year data from 2000 to 2019. So a lot of this may have changed over the last 6 years. But when I put this course together, that was the most up-to-date data they had. And from the last 20 years of 2000 to 2019, there were 333 active shooter incidents in 43 states. 135 of these incidents met mass killing definition, which is 3 or more killings in a single incident. So, yeah, this was as of 2021. The FBI's. So I might want to go back and look and see if they've updated this since. But yeah, that's got to be over a 20-year span. I don't imagine. But the way it reads is like, oh my gosh, there were 379 and this year? No, I don't. That's got to be a 20-year span. I'm glad. I'm not glad. I wonder why they didn't put that up. But I mean, you can go to the FBI's website and look at stuff like this right here. It says, you get this information here. This is all on. This is my active shooter course where we go over early recognition and intervention, and this is pulled straight from the FBI's active shooter summary, 20-year active shooter summary, 333 incidents, 2,851 casualties, 135 met the mass killing definition. Number of shooters were 345, 16 of which wore body armor, 332 were male, 13 were female. Since we're on this real quick, one thing that I always like to hit on this when I teach these classes is this part right here. Now, again, I think a lot of this is going to change over the last 6 years because we've seen an increase in like school shootings and stuff, which sucks. But in the 333 active shooter incidents, handguns accounted for 67% of the weapons used. And the reason I like to bring that up is because the media is always fear-mongering the ARs and, oh, they're using ARs for active shooters. And it's like, yeah, they are, but not really. I mean, 67% were handguns, so I always like to talk about that in these classes. So I have to imagine that number is over the last 20 years.
I can't help but think a lot of people who would use an AR use the AR because the media tells them to. Maybe not flat out says, hey, use an AR, but the fact of the matter is they're watching them and they're just like, ooh, ARs, oh, scary, they're so horrible, oh, they're so deadly. And, if I'm this know-nothing, moody 16-year-old wanting to do something like this, I'm looking and on CNN and whatnot, they're like just talking nonstop about AR-15s. My brain's gonna go, oh, I should get an assault rifle. That should be what I use. But I think if you actually knew about firearms, you're like, I want to do as much destruction as possible, and you actually knew about firearms, that's not the firearm you would pick. It's definitely not the one I would pick. I'm not going to say what I would pick because I don't think that's a good thing to go over right now, but it would not be an AR-15, and it would not be something that the media fearmongers over either. It's something far more readily available, far more practical, and it's something that nobody ever discusses banning.
Yeah, I mean, well, like I said earlier, we've been killing each other for thousands of years before guns were ever invented. You take away guns, and we're just going to figure out other ways. And arguably, there are a lot more nasty, destructive ways to kill people. But yeah, it's like, well, 67% over the last 20 years. That was 2000 to 2019. Those numbers may be skewed a little bit since, but well, why do we use handguns? First off, well, they're easy to conceal. Most people can't walk into locations with a long rifle or shotgun strapped to them, and it's very hard to conceal. So it's easier to conceal and get away with. But the fear mongering of the AR platforms being more deadly is just the fear mongering. I mean, a semi automatic AR 15 shoots just as fast as a semi automatic handgun. They're both semi automatic. The definition of semi automatic means it fires as fast as I can pull the trigger. So if you give me an AR in one hand and a handgun in the other hand, and I start pulling, they're both going to shoot just as fast as I can pull the trigger. The only real difference in them is, well, the caliber of bullets can be bigger, but the longer barrels make them more accurate. So accuracy and precision shooting is where the ARs come into play. But when we look at some of these active shooter response videos, body cameras of cops, typically, what are the cops using to stop the active shooter? Well, their duty pistol. You know, this fear mongering is always like, an AR-15 is the worst. It's unstoppable. Oh, we can't stop these people with the AR-15s, but we see it all the time. The cops go in and stop an active shooter with a pistol. So it's. I tell people all the time, guns are tools, and they're only as capable as the person wielding them. You know, the analogy I like to use is you give a contractor or a construction worker a hammer, he'll build you a house. You give me a hammer, I might build you a birdhouse, and it might be a little lopsided. You know, you give an untrained person a rifle, could they use it? Sure. But if you give a trained person a trained person with a handgun will absolutely take out an untrained person with a rifle. And I'm a firm believer in that. It's just a tool that's only as capable as the person using it. So, yeah, the fear mongering is just like you said. It's like, oh, they see it and let me use it. And you know, that's where they go with it.
Yeah, but I guess people like to pick on the AR-15 because they kind of look scary. They have a metal stock on them, and it looks military and cool. And
Yeah.
so people just assume it's just the most badass weapon you can get, the most deadly weapon, because we know in combat we go for the most deadly rifles.
Right. Well, yeah. What they want to
You
talk
want to
about.
make sure there's nothing but a pair of boots left when you shoot somebody in combat.
And they're like, well, the Second Amendment was made for the flintlock pistols and the old Revolutionary era weapons. It's like, dude, have you seen how big those freaking balls are? Like, okay, they're not accurate, but those things are nasty. Like, let me pull out my freaking cannon and shoot a home intruder with it because it's a Revolutionary War style weapon. It's like that whole argument is dumb. It's like, have you seen those flintlock pistols shooting those 50 caliber freaking balls? I mean, that'll put a
Yeah,
hole
I
in
was
you.
watching some videos of a guy shooting one in slow motion, and it's like showing how his entire body was just like
Yeah, it's yeah,
just like rippling. He said every time he fired, it felt like he was getting punched by Mike Tyson.
yeah, it's such a
I think there's
ridiculous.
a much higher chance of surviving an AR-15 than that.
Yeah, well, and that's one reason that the Geneva Conventions only lets military use FMJs instead of hollow points. It's like we want to shoot our enemy, but we don't want to make it cruel and unusual. Um, okay, you know.
Well, I was always told that soldiers are supposed, and you know more about this than me, so you can correct me, but soldiers are more trained to injure than to kill, because if you are in combat, you shoot somebody and you injure them. Now, two people got to take them out of the battlefield, therefore, you took three people out. Versus if you just kill them, well, there's nothing you can do for that person, so just keep engaging.
Well, I mean,
That's what I have been told by veterans that are older than you.
yeah, the thing is, though, it's like the whole thing, center mass of the target offered in order to stop the threat. That's a military thing too. We don't shoot to wound, we don't shoot to maim, we don't shoot to kill. We shoot center mass of the target offered in order to stop the threat. If they die, that sucks. But yeah, the Geneva Conventions also says that if we shoot insurgent or whatever, the enemy, whatever you want to call them, and they don't die, pending our own safety, we're required to render first aid to them. And, we can't just go finish them off and be like, oh, they didn't die, let me finish them off. We're required to render first aid. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody would ever want to put on recording to say, Well, technically, we have to render first aid if they don't die, so we just make sure they're dead. So we don't have to. I don't think anybody would want to say that or do that. But
So, do you think this thing that the Trump administration is doing, creating the civil rights section that is dedicated to protecting the Second Amendment gun ownership rights, what do you think? Do you think that's a useful thing? Do you think that's something that we need? I think of crap hole states like New York, where the amount of infringement is off the chain. I think of how in New York City they tried to make everywhere in the city qualify as a gun-free zone
Mhm.
so that no one can be armed. And so when I think of stuff like that, I'm like, yeah, I think that there should be some heavy consequences for that sort of thing. Just, I think New Jersey and that woman who she had to like she was applying to get a carry permit, and you have to make an argument that you are in danger. And she applied for one because she had a stalker. It was an ex, and while it was pending, she ended up getting murdered. And it's just like nonsense like that. It's like I think that this could be a good thing if it was actually wielded, because the fact of the matter is, people like what Bondi said here. She said it's kind of treated like a second class right. And it's like, it is. There is no other right that we have. That there are more people out there who are just absolutely hell bent on taking from us than our right to defend ourselves.
Yeah, and that's what I said. I just don't understand. You know, there's really no other right out there that's constantly being questioned like that, and it's going back to what I was saying earlier, it's like, do people not realize as soon as we draw that line, as soon as we tell the government or state officials or anything like that, that we want to take away the Second Amendment, it's like, if they win and do that, well, then all we're doing again, like I say all the time, is drawing that line. And now every other amendment is going to be open for discussion. As soon as we take away the Second Amendment, every other one will be open for discussion, and then it will be, what can and can't you say. Now we can start questioning the First Amendment. What can and can't you post? Freedom of religion, freedom of protest, videotaping, all this kind of stuff. It's like, why do people not realize that? It's like, I get you don't like the Second Amendment. Well, I don't like what comes out of your stupid face sometimes, it's like, but I can't tell you not to talk because I don't like what you say. I can't tell you what to post on social media because I don't like what you post because of your First Amendment right. So why should we be just doing it with the Second Amendment? It's so, yeah, like you said, it's so the only debated amendment out there. Nobody's talking about taking away our trial by jury or excessive bails or things like that. What do I think? I mean, yeah, I think it could be a good thing as long as, you know, everybody always tends to get really big fat heads with it. And like I said before, it's like, who are these people? How are they chosen? Why were they chosen? I mean, the last director of the ATF couldn't even tell you what the definition of a semi-automatic handgun was. So it's like, that thing said that it was comprised of FBI and ATF agent. It's like, who was selected? How were they selected? And why were they selected? And are they good enough, knowledgeable enough to create that distinction and determine if these rights are being infringed? And I agree with New York and stuff like that. It's like, the states were allowed to be able to create their own laws as long as those laws didn't infringe on the Constitution. That was the whole thing. But yeah, we see it all over the place. Your mention of New Jersey, it's like, yeah, California, some of these places, New York, it's like, I know in New York it's the same thing. You got to go and see a judge. You have to have exigent circumstances, some additional cause to show your life isn't threatened to get a handgun permit. And it's like, yeah, this could take 6 months, 8 months, and by then it's like, oh, I'm already dead. So on one hand, I am like, yeah, this could be a good thing to really start looking at these states and scaling these ridiculous handgun laws, as long as they do it right. As long as they don't start going overboard. Anything in the government always ends up going overboard. So I think they just need to be careful and make sure that they are only, how do I say it? That their only goal is to keep the Second Amendment from being infringed and not starting to make up their own laws like the ATF does, and going down the wrong path with it.
Yeah, because one of the things I do think of when I read about this, and I think, well, this is all well and fun while our guys are in, but what will this division look like when a hardcore Democrat gets back in? Because the fact of the matter is, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I dream of the day when the Democratic Party is gone and it's just replaced with the Libertarian Party. And it's just Republicans and Libertarians. Like that's what I think should be happening. I think there's a lot of people on the left and they're like, I don't like all this nonsense, but I just don't vibe with the Republicans. And it's like, you're a libertarian, okay? Go be a libertarian.
Right.
Vote in a libertarian, But the fact of the matter is, most people don't even know what a libertarian is. But I think that there are many, many people who are Republican and many people who are Democrat because they don't know libertarian is a thing. If they actually stopped, looked at it, they would go, wait a minute, there's a third option, that's who we are. But that being said, I think to myself, eventually we're going to get some hardcore Democrat in office. It's how it goes,
Well, yeah, same thing with the Supreme Court.
This look like? What will this look like?
Right.
When somebody who is like Biden, who is like Obama, who is like Clinton, when they are in office, what is this division going to look like?
Probably just
and how can it be turned on us?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but the thing is, I think it doesn't seem like the government disbands things as much as they weaponize them.
Yeah.
And so that's my concern.
Just appoint somebody who is in their best interests, in their favors. And that's why I said it's so important that instead of looking at it through our own discretions and our own opinions, is we need to look at it through the Constitution and the Constitution only, period. But who interprets the Constitution? It's like, well, the Supreme Court interprets it. But we've seen over years and years and years that we always end up interpreting it a little different every time. So how are we going to do that other than putting our own biases into it?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much like the way different churches will interpret scripture a little differently. But the thing is, if your church doesn't interpret scripture the way you like, you go to a different church. You have that freedom. You go, well, I don't like this. You guys are supporting things I don't support. And I think you're taking that out of context. And whether you are correct about that or not, you pack up your wife and kids, you go to the church next door and you say, aha, this is a church that covers my views, and you live your life according to that. But the thing is, you don't have that option when it comes to the government and how it's interpreting the Constitution.
Right.
You can't say, well, I'm going to pack up and move next door. No, you're here.
Right. Well, it's like the whole abortion thing. It's like, well, we're going to leave it up to the states. Okay, there's nothing in the Constitution that says anything about abortion, so leave it up to the states. If you want to go to a state that murders babies, then go move to a state that murders babies. But it's not up to the federal government to make that because there's nothing in the Constitution about it.
Well, I mean, the very first thing it says is your right to life.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Liberty and there you go.
Well, yeah.
If everybody has a right to life, everybody has a right to life. Therefore, nobody doesn't have a right to life.
Can't take it. Yeah.
I think that right there, I think invalidates anything anybody says about the Constitution not having anything to say anything about abortion. It's like, nope, it says right to life.
Oh yeah, I'm sure the forefathers would agree too. But yeah, I think like you said with the opinions, it's like most, how many people will go and like, I don't know what to do. They'll go ask their friends and family for their opinions, and they'll keep asking people until they get the one thing they want to hear. It's like, you're not really looking for an opinion. You're
I
not
think of the
really.
women who go on Reddit for relationship advice.
It's like you're not really looking for someone to help you make a decision. You already know what decision you want to make. You're just waiting for the right person to validate it. I'm going to keep asking and asking until somebody validates it. It's like,
Hold on a second. I need to go ask my echo chamber.
yeah, it's like, so yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's again, how are we going to interpret that? And how are we going to make sure we're not putting any biases and things on it and I think about like I've thought about this before. I know it's kind of a stretch when it comes to the Second Amendment, but I think of like the sovereign citizens who get pulled over without a driver's license. And they say, well, the Constitution says I have the right to travel, therefore I don't need a driver's license to drive the car. And it's like the Constitution says you have the right to travel. It doesn't say you have the right to drive. You can walk your happy ass however long you need to go. You get your horse and carriage, and there are specific things that we have made to make sure that people know how to drive safely. So it's like, they want to bring up the Constitution because they don't need a driver's license. It's like, so then how do we, if we're going to, here's how I correlate the two. It's like, okay, you have the right to travel, not the right to drive. Nothing is stopping you from traveling. However you want to get there, other than driving, if you don't want a driver's license. There aren't roadblocks and people stopping you from crossing state lines or even cities. And so I go, okay, when we talk about the Constitution, it says you have the right to bear arms. And I had this conversation with someone not too long ago. It's like, and I think I kind of touched on it earlier, was, well, when we talk about felons or mentally ill and stuff like that, it's like, are we infringing on your right to bear arms by keeping you from possessing it on your person in public? You can have it in your house. You just can't take it out with you in public. So are we stopping you from your right to bear arms? Because we're not taking away the guns from you. You can still have it for home defense. You just can't have it while you're walking down the street. Now, I'm not saying this is what I agree with. I'm just saying as far as a debate, because somebody brought that up with me the other day. It's like, well, we're not infringing on your Second Amendment. We're just saying you can't have it when you're out and about in the public places. You can have it at home. You can have it at your house. We're not taking away your guns. You just can't have them there. And it's like, that's how we keep interpreting these things. It's like, well, the Constitution wasn't made, the Second Amendment wasn't made for these deadly assault rifles nowadays. It's like, okay, well, then the Constitution wasn't made for you to talk your ass off on social media because there wasn't internet at the time. So if we're going to use that same logic, then we get to censor anything we want to on social media. And if you say something on social media that we don't like, you can be arrested for it because the Constitution didn't say anything about social media and the internet. So if you post pictures of holding freaking Trump's head and making all these statements about killing Trump, well, then you should go to jail because you just threatened our president. And the Constitution isn't going to protect you on social media because the founding fathers didn't say anything about social media because it wasn't invented yet. You see how we start interpreting all
I
this?
mean, I can imagine this, the founding fathers thinking of the future and thinking, I imagine we'll have better, more modern guns. I don't think that they ever looked in the future and thought, but we're going to have Facebook. But we're going to have TikTok.
Yeah.
MySpace. That's where it'll be at. Like, nope, they didn't even imagine social media. At the time, free speech was standing on a soapbox in a crowded street and hoping somebody wanted to stop and listen to you.
At that time, if you would have burned a flag in public or stepped on it, you would have been imprisoned with no due process because they considered that a form of domestic terrorism. And that was after the Constitution was written. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on it. If
I don't know.
Somebody wants to
I know
look
it took a while to actually
but
make the flag. Like, how many years was it before we officially had a flag? I know it was quite a while.
June 14th, 1777 is when the first flag was created, I believe. Betsy Ross. So, wasn't...
Betsy Ross is kind of just a legend. She's kind of just like a DEI. It's like, oh, we need a woman in here. What's up with all these we need a founding mother. What did she do? She sewed.
I think it was only 2 years after we signed the Constitution that we had the flag.
Like, I remember reading about a man who is Native American, and he traveled, and somebody can like look this up and fact check me because I'm too lazy. But I remember a Native American man. He traveled doing sales or something, and he got harassed a lot by white settlers. And he wrote a letter to the government and said, "You guys need to adopt an official American flag because I want to carry it so that people won't harass me." And that was like, it was one of those things that sat on the back burner, but that's actually what made them go, yeah, we need to do that like now. And they like finally like, this one's it.
Well, I'm not
And
saying
like,
that
I
Betsy
remember reading
Ross
about
made up the idea. I'm just saying Betsy Ross was the one made the flag that was approved with the first 13 stars.
I don't think Betsy Ross,
You know.
I don't think she was real. I don't think so.
Well,
I
June
think she
14th,
existed,
1777 was the
but
first official adopted flag in the United States. So maybe
I think
there were
she's
some
like,
unofficial ones before then.
I think she's like Pocahontas. Pocahontas was real, but not nearly as cool as we've been fed. You know, we watch Disney movies and it's like, she was awesome. And then you watch it and you're like, oh, she was a 14-year-old who was kidnapped by settlers and married a guy who grew illegal tobacco and then died when she visited the queen. That's not actually a cool story at all. And I think that's Betsy Ross. You know, it's like, oh, she was so cool. She sewed the first flag. And it's like, I'm sure if you asked her, she'd be like, I don't know. I was a woman who lived in the 1700s. I sewed lots of stuff. Like, we all sewed a lot of stuff. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, the point is that you burned the flag or stepped on it or disrespected, you would go to jail for it. I mean, and now we're burning flags on the street. And, you know, if you would have said something, you know, the whole point of the First Amendment was to protect you from persecution from the government, right? That's what the First Amendment was. You could say what you want without fear of repercussion or persecution from the government. Because if you talked crap about the king, you'd be put in jail without due process. So when we established the Constitution, they were like, you know what? You can talk crap about the president, whatever. You're not going to get persecuted for it. You have the right to your opinion. That's what it was for. Not to stand on public property and, you know, I could stand on a public street and stand in front of my neighbor's house and yell obscenities all day. And I have the right to do that because it's the First Amendment right. It's like, you're breaching peace, okay? That's what you're doing. Just because the First Amendment may say this doesn't mean that you have the right. It's like the roadblocks, you know. Now we're going down a different paths. It's like, I'm going to protest. Yeah, you can protest peacefully without infringing on everybody else's right to live peacefully. You know, it's like you are infringing on my right to travel.
Transportation is a right, and you're standing in the road, being in the way. Then I guess you're infringing on people's rights.
Right.
And
So it's like,
so I think they have a right to run you over, right?
yeah, I mean, you know, and this is what happens when we start talking about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and stuff. It's like, well, this and this and this. If you're going to question this, and I can question this because the forefathers did this, and it's like, well, if you would have burned the flag or threatened the president and any other, if you would have, well, you couldn't have posted stuff, but let's say you drew a picture holding the president's head, and then you went out and were like, yeah, I drew this picture. I hope the president gets beheaded. You would have went to jail. Right? You would have went to jail for that. You know, it would have been a form of domestic terrorism, you know, if you would have burned their flag. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure it was considered treason if you burned the flag back then. It's like, and that was after the Constitution was created, and now we do it all the time. So it's like, well, how are we interpreting these? And that's the whole problem with the whole Constitution thing is you just start talking about all this stuff and just going down rabbit holes. You know, I don't know what the answer is.
That actually, it reminds me of like the conversation we had, or I had with my oldest son, who he's getting more and more politically minded as he gets older. And he was very, very offended at Trump saying that it's going to be illegal, you know, it's going to be a imprisonable offense to burn the flag. And he's like, that's free speech and blah, blah, blah. And so, you know, I said to him, I'm like, okay. I said, where does free speech have its limit? Where does it have its limit? I said, are you allowed to say, you know, there's a bomb or shout something like that in public? And he's like, well, no. I said, well, are you allowed to do a call to action? Can you say, here is a call to action. Go commit this crime, such as bomb this place, shoot this place up, etc., etc. He says, no, free speech does not cover that. And I said, okay, let's try another one. I said, well, what if you decided instead to write it down and post it? So you don't speak it, but instead you type it out. Hey, this is a call to action. Go do this crime. Does free speech cover that? He says, no, it's still called action. I said, okay, so let's take it a step further. What if instead we drew it as a picture? And so I could say, well, I didn't say it, I didn't type it, but I drew a picture of an organized rally attacking and committing these crimes. Does free speech cover drawing that picture? Or can I say, no, it's free speech and it's art? He says, okay, fine, yeah, it doesn't cover that. I said, well, what if we took something that symbolized the whole of the country and we publicly burned it? So we could say we didn't say it, we didn't write it, we didn't draw it, but you just did a theatrical display. Now is that covered? And he says, okay, I see what you're getting at. I said, when people burn a flag, they're making a statement. It has nothing to do with a cloth being set on fire. It's the statement that you are intentionally and knowingly making. It's no different than if I took somebody's picture who I hated and I made a video of myself burning it or ripping it while looking threateningly at the camera. I'm saying I intend to do harm to this individual, or in this case, to this country. And if you said that in any other way, that would be illegal. It has nothing to do with burning a flag. I believe you can burn a flag to dispose of it, can you not? If you had a damaged, tattered old flag, you can fold it and respectfully burn it. No one's going to arrest you for that. But when you are treating it like that, it's not a matter of saying, this is our flag, it's sacred, it's special, don't hurt it. It's a matter of saying, I know what you're saying while you're doing that, and that's not something you're allowed to say, because that is a call to action and a call to violence.
Yeah, it's all about the intention. I mean, yeah, you're technically supposed to separate the colors with a razor blade and then burn it. That's how you're technically supposed to properly dispose of a flag. But yeah, it's your intention and what's behind it. It's like if I trip and accidentally stumble into somebody, I had no intention on battering them. But if I purposely come up and push them, my intention was to cause harm to them. So, yeah, you're making a statement against the United States, and I agree with you. And it's not a good statement, and I believe you should be held accountable for that. We're the only country in the world that allows our citizens to disrespect the country. Again, fact check me, but I'm pretty sure there's no other country in the world that will allow its citizens to publicly burn their flags or take down the flag and put up a different country's flag. We have a statue it's an art and everything. Everybody recognizes it. I'm pretty sure anybody today, even these dumb young kids nowadays, recognize the statue of the soldier holding this flag up like that, and it's like we have soldiers that literally our national anthem describes soldiers dying. Like, we had soldiers that were literally dying to keep the flag up. When they were bombing us, the flag was coming down, and there were soldiers using their bodies to keep the flag standing. People used their dead bodies to keep our flag standing. I mean, we have pictures of the soldiers holding it up and dead bodies and stuff like that. It's like we died for the rights we have in this country. We kept the flag up with the bodies of our sons so it wouldn't touch the ground, because that was this ultimate symbol of defeat, was when the flag hit the ground. That's why the flags aren't supposed to touch the ground. So the fact that you live in a country not only where our sons died for these rights. Our sons died to keep a flag up as a mere symbol of we are not defeated. What's the word in? I'll have to sing the song in my head, but there's a part in the song while the flag was still there, right? It's like you've even said it before. You've talked about how the guy's looking through the ship, right? And he's can hear it, and he's looking at it, and the flag's still standing, but he didn't realize the flag was still standing because it was standing from the bodies of our American soldiers, and it's telling everybody we haven't been defeated yet. So the fact that not only, number one, you're going to step on the flag or burn the flag is a huge disrespect to those sons and even daughters at the time, I guess, that died for the country to keep the flag standing. But you're going to, on our soil, take our flag down and hoist up another country's flag? That's no. I think you should go to
You love that country so much, go live there.
Go to another
you
country
love Palestine
and do
so much, go live in Palestine.
Yeah, go to
you can
Palestine.
do it all you want, at least she tried to go.
Yeah, go to Palestine,
and she can stay
lower the Palestinian flag, and put up an American flag and see what freaking happens to you, right? It's you live in a country, the only country in the world, as far as I know, that puts up with that, and it's what the hell, But you want to take away our Second Amendment right. It's okay. Makes no sense.
Mm-hmm. All right, so another piece of news. Some people like this news. I personally do not. Robert, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Cekada, or is it Cekada? Because sometimes the E doesn't make a C say when you're talking about a name. I'm going to say Cekada. Robert Cekada, nominated to lead the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosive, also known as the ATF, even though it should be BATFE. But the president nominated veteran ATF official Robert Cekada, previously a deputy director, to run the agency. Nomination is being hailed by many pro-gun groups as the first ever truly pro-Second Amendment choice for the ATF leadership. Supporters expect his confirmation could slow or reverse what they view as overreach by the ATF. Critics say political changes may not address longstanding structural issues at the agency. So, if my memory serves me correctly, we did not request a conservative lead the ATF. We requested the ATF be abolished. Sure, it's all well and fun. One of our guys is in office. He has a position. That's great.
For how long?
For the next 4 years.
Yeah.
All it's going to take is a new president replacing him, and we will be right back where we were during the Biden administration, where you could get audited over the littlest tiny BS. I'm going, no, that's not good enough. People who are not looking into the future, instead they're looking at the here and now. Oh, this is great. And I guess, our gun rights are being protected. I don't have to worry about buying firearms right now and blah, blah, blah. And it's this is not a long-term solution to anything. This is a little Hello Kitty Band-Aid on a large injury. The ATF should have been abolished a long time ago. The ATF should have been abolished back when it was just the A, before the tobacco and firearms and explosives got added in. During the Prohibition, they sucked. And what did they do? In the typical government tradition, they gave them a promotion and promoted them to tobacco, firearms, and explosives. We have Ruby Ridge, we have Waco, and just all the overreach and their own little rules that they make up. Oh, that's a small barreled rifle, and that's actually an AR pistol. And it's the fact of the matter is, it is a useless bureau. I mean, it is. I can't think of a single thing they've ever done that makes up for all the harm they've caused. And simply putting a conservative in charge of it does not doesn't cut it to me at all. I'm like, no, I want the ATF like gone altogether. Goodbye. No ATF. And my biggest reason is no matter how good the ATF could end up being, because Robert Cekada or whatever is the director, or is the because he is the new leader. He's not the director anymore. I guess director is lower than leader, but because he's leading it, it could always revert back with just one election.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm not pleased with that.
Well, I don't know the guy. This is the first I'm hearing about it. You know, don't know the guy. Didn't know he was elected. You know, coming from prior law enforcement, I was, and you know, we've talked about it. I've always defended 10, 15 years ago, I would have defended every law enforcement agency out there. But the things we've seen over the last 10 years with the FBI, the ATF, you know, the president weaponizing them and stuff like that, it's like, yeah, maybe we do need to start questioning some of these federal agencies. I mean, each state typically has enforcement agencies. You know, Tennessee has the ABC Commission, Alcoholic Beverage Commission, that are enforcing it. And it's like, okay, so federal now has an alcohol thing too. And it's like, you know, and yeah, they've, historically speaking, they seem to have done more harm than they've done good. From the law enforcement side, I hate saying stuff. You know, I've always hated talking bad about other law enforcement agencies or other law enforcement officers. So it does pain me a little bit when I say stuff like that. But it's like, yeah, and again, I always say this, I don't know what the answer is. I mean, if I had all the answers, I'd probably be somewhere else giving all the answers.
That just sort of assassinated you.
Yeah, but something definitely needs to be done, you know. As an FFL holder now, you and I have seen firsthand now, we're in depth on the ATF regulations and stuff, and it's like some people don't need to do the background checks in the forms. You know, we've seen it when we went to the gun show the first time. We were trying to sell guns through the ATF standards, and it's like, yeah, I mean, and they're making up their own rules as they go, and something needs to be done. You know, I've said
like the nonsense, the A&D book.
Yeah, you know, logging in and out, and you know, having to fill out the forms. Just because we are a licensed FFL dealer now, we have to do all the paperwork and do the background checks and do all the stuff.
They give us like on their website they had instructions on how to do a digital A&D book, and so we made one according to the standards, and our ATF agent says, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And we're like, what are you talking about? It says it right here. And he's like, no, you can't. It's like, then why is it on the website? Why is instructions on the website on how to do it on Excel?
Yeah. That's
if
literally
we're not allowed to do it on Excel. And he's like, no, you have to buy a paper A&D book. Here's a source. And we're shipped this stupid, it looks like somebody printed it on their mom's computer.
We bought it off of Amazon, you know, it's like a third party thing.
And it's like
the ATF requires,
this is what we can use.
Yeah.
But we can't use this. And they're like, well, what? He had said something like, well, Excel, it doesn't show when you've changed stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, but you can set Excel so it does show changes made.
Right.
And it also covered that in the website.
Yeah,
it's like, and make sure you have it like this.
Yeah, it's specifically
we're being told by our agent this, but the official ATF regulations say this, but we still have to listen to the agent.
Well, it's like,
and then there's like
10 different agents, 10 different, you know, right.
Yeah. And then like the nonsense with the small barreled rifles versus the AR pistols. And they're like, oh, you know, if you're 1 inch below this, that's now an AR pistol. So it's like, okay, so I can sell this one to an 18-year-old, but not this one. And the difference is 1 inch of barrel length. You know, just nonsense like that.
We can't sell a stripped lower receiver to an 18-year-old because you
Because
can
they might
turn
turn it
that
into an AR pistol.
AR pistol, so they run it as a pistol, so you have to be 21. It's like, yeah. It's like, who's making this shit up?
Yeah, and it's nonsense. It's a nonsense organization. They haven't done. I do not believe there is a single life that has ever been saved because of the ATF. Like, I don't believe that. I am willing to have somebody fact check me on that. I could think that there's probably quite a few people dead, quite a few people burned alive. A lot of women and children,
Well, the
but
thing is,
a
like
lot of
the
dogs.
FFL holders, us as company and licensed businesses, FFL holders have been commonly referred to as the first line of defense to making sure the people that aren't supposed to have them don't have them, right? With the background checks and the paperwork and stuff. And then you argue whether or not we should even be doing that. And that's a whole different conversation. But typically FFLs have been termed the first line of defense. We are the ones making sure the people that aren't supposed to be getting them aren't supposed to have them because we do the background checks and the paperwork and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, well, we can argue whether or not we should do that altogether. But it's like, even without the background checks, you and I have discussed it before. If somebody comes in and we don't like the things they're saying, if somebody comes in and it's like, I'm not comfortable selling you a gun because of whatever.
You have a bad vibe.
Yeah, you got a bad vibe, or you smell like alcohol, or you smell like you just did drugs. We can make that determination not to sell you a gun.
You smell like a felon.
So if FFL businesses has typically been coined as the first line of defense, but the ATF is out to get us. It's like they are out to get us. It's like, why you should be supporting us and working with us, but you make up the laws, you make it hard, you're constantly doing this, like you said, with the Excel spreadsheets and stuff. And it's like, oh, the ATF says we need this, this, and this, and this in your A&D book. They have made up a certain list of criteria that's supposed to be in the A&D book, and if it's not in there, we can get fined or even arrested for it. They've specifically said, here's the criteria we want in the A&D book, and if you don't have it, you can be arrested or fined for it, or both, but we're not going to provide it to you. Go buy it on Amazon through a freaking third-party vendor, but then make sure you buy the right one. It's got to be updated because we always change what we need in it. It's like, if you are going to imprison or fine me for criteria that's supposed to be in the A&D book, then you should provide it to us. You should provide it. And if you change it, you should provide us a new one. And yeah, the whole freaking Excel sheet, that was stupid too. But it's like, yeah, they're constantly out to get us. And it's like, look, I've said it before, we're either all going to do it or we're not going to do it. So if we disband the ATF, then the 4473s and all that stuff are gone, and then we make our own determination from there. It's like the straw purchases. You remember the whole thing with like, oh, the husband can't come and buy it for the wife because that's a straw purchase. It's like, no, that's not what a straw purchase is. Straw purchase is buying it for someone is not supposed to have it, not just buying it for somebody. And we had that discussion with. But again, like we said, you ask the same question to 10 different ATF agents, and you get 10 different answers. We just went through that with that one gun that was shipped to us improperly. It's like, no, you're not supposed to do that. But he's saying his ATF agent said it was okay. And it's like, our ATF agent is saying it's not okay. And it's like, well, one of them is going to arrest us and one of them won't. So there's a breakdown in communication here. It's federal. It's not different from state to state. If you ask one cop in one state about battery or assault and ask another cop in another state, you're probably going to get two different answers because each state has their own interpretation on what assault and a battery is. But this is a federal agency, which means the guidelines go across the entire nation. So one agent should have the exact same answer in Washington state that the agent in Florida should have. But they don't. And why is that?
Yeah, and it's like also when it comes to selling firearms to people from other states. Right. It's like, well, make sure you learn the laws and regulations. It's like, look, dude, it should be you run that $10 background check. If they come out clean, they can have it.
Right.
If they don't, they can't.
Right.
Like, it's like, well, this firearm is California compliant and this one isn't, and this and that, and there's laws here, and it's like,
you're the federal law enforcement agency.
My cousin reached out to me recently. And she said, I hear you own a gun store. My husband is looking for this firearm. And I thought, hey, I should try to buy it from Melody. And I said, well, thank you, but you live in Florida. I said, I can't sell it to you. I said, I could sell you one and then have it shipped to a gun store there, and then you'd have to go there and fill out and all that stuff. And why would you want to do that?
Right.
You know, when you could go to a gun store that's local to you and buy it there. So I'm like, yeah, thanks, but you can't support me like that. But I'm, you
Right.
know, I appreciate the gesture.
Right. And then the question
But,
is, why are we doing that? Because it's a federal agency. So the ATF should just have
Mhm.
federal nationwide guidelines. And if they're not, if they're going to say each state can make their own laws on buying and selling and regulations on transferring and stuff like that, well, then the ATF should be like, okay, we have nothing to do with it then. We're either going to have the state laws or the federal laws. And it's like, you're enforcing federal laws, but then saying the states can have their own laws, and you make no freaking sense.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like, in the end, we're the bad guys.
Yep.
If things are, you
They come
guys
back
make
side.
it as complicated as possible. And then you're not the ones where it's like, you made crappy laws, get your act together.
Right. Yep.
It's like, no, you failed. You know, you sold a firearm to this person who came to you with a fake ID, and you know, he's a felon, he came with his twin brother's ID and bought a firearm from you. Therefore, you're in trouble, you're going to jail.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, if we're the first line of defense, why are we the ones who get in trouble?
Yep.
It seems like you should be helping us as much as possible, like supporting us for as much as possible. But instead you get like these, like our ATF agent, you know, he's like talking to us like we're best friends, and he's like, yeah, you know, we got to keep in mind, we're not out to get you, because if there's no gun stores, I'm out of a job. And it's like, don't talk to me like we're friends. We're not friends. Like,
Yeah.
I've talked to used car salesmen. I know how this works. You talk about things you have in common, you smile, you make eye contact, you mirror their movements, and they get their guard down and they think that you're best friends, and it's like, no. No. That don't work on me. Try them on someone else. Thank you.
Yep.
So yeah, the thing is, absolutely nothing has been done to keep the ATF from being able to be weaponized.
Yep.
And therefore, just because somebody is in charge who might not weaponize it, doesn't mean nobody's ever going to show up who would weaponize it. We've already had people who would weaponize it show up. And yeah, so I'm not pleased with that. I'm not impressed. I just say, no, I want it abolished. I want it dismantled. I want it gone. The ATF is gay. I don't like it. Get rid of it. And we can deal with it on a local level. We can deal with firearm sales on a local level like God intended.
Yep. Yep, I agree.